Speaking of the situation anywhere, this is the war that possibly is coming to our shores. The War Room. We are wargaming different scenarios. We are not predicting that these things will happen. We're asking, could they happen? What do we do if they happen? Here's our second scenario: global civil unrest. Now the United States is no longer the world's policeman. Mexico has been taken over by narco gangs. Oil and gas pipelines have been targeted and destroyed. Tourism, non-existent due to safety concerns. Ukraine is the first European country to fail, Eastern European. Ireland is the first Western country to fail. 50 million people worldwide are unemployed. There are riots in the streets. Joining me now from Berkeley, California, is former CIA operative Bob Beck, one of the scariest dudes I know. And in Chicago is Department of Homeland Security's Red Cell Unit, Brad Thor, also author of many bestsellers. Brad, let me start with you because we're going to start with Mexico. There's breaking news that just came over the wire just the last couple of minutes. I believe you have that update?
I do. Out of Juarez, that their chief law enforcement officer there has now resigned after one of his officers and a prison guard were killed over the last couple of days with notes threatening his family and everything. Glenn, this is what we talked about last time I was on with you, is that Mexico is this close to being a failed state, and it's going to be a narco state, and this is going to pose serious, as we discussed before, serious security concerns for the United States.
Right, and it will lead to, I believe it will play into at least the disenfranchisement and a possible uprising here in the United States with, God forbid, please everybody, have a seat and relax just a little bit. Bob, on the world stage, what are you most concerned about if these things would come true? What happens to us as we have to retract back into ourselves because we can't afford to be the world's policeman? What concerns you? What does the world look like?
Well, here's a couple scenarios that are becoming very real, are becoming not just risks, but probability. Let's say we go into a prolonged depression. Price of oil falls to $5 or $6 a barrel. The Gulf states start going under one by one. Saudi Arabia depends on very expensive oil. So does Iran. Iran's got a population of 70 million. The people start to starve. They're out of money, a big army. They move into the Gulf and take it. We have a hostile regime in control of our resources. That is not that far away.
You know, we have, I know both of you gentlemen, we have talked over the years about Iran getting a nuke, and Benjamin Netanyahu is now the guy in charge, and he looked me in the eye and said, we have a right to survive. We have a right to live. And he was very clear with me that he would not allow Iran to get a nuke. They now have the material to make one. How much of a role does that play in what's coming?
Glenn,
I think it's huge, Glenn.
Go ahead, Brad.
I think it's going to be I think it's going to be a big deal, especially if this crisis, and I have confidence in America, I don't think we're going to get wiped off the map as far as just having to remove ourselves from the world stage. But if that does happen, if we're wargaming that here, Israel, if your older brother is all of a sudden not at the playground with you one morning, your younger brother needs to step up and knock the biggest kid right in the teeth if he doesn't want to have problems. And I wouldn't begrudge Israel the right to do that for a second.
Bob?
Glenn, there's a pool at the Pentagon right now. I talked to a couple officers last couple days that what are the chances of a major war in the Middle East? And they're putting it 55% with Netanyahu's appointment today.
What does that do to us, Bob? I mean, you know, Archduke Ferdinand was a guy that most people in America never even heard of. He was gunned down in the streets, and all of a sudden we were in World War I, and the whole world was at war. And we were there with him.
I'll tell you the way it goes, Glenn. Netanyahu goes into Gaza City. At the same time, there's rockets coming across the border from Lebanon. The Israelis are obligated to go into Damascus, hit Hamas headquarters there, hit Hezbollah. That will pull in Iran. There will be retaliation against Iran. Iran has a couple thousand rockets facing, again, this is my bias, but facing the oil facilities on the other side of the Gulf. And they have promised, and I truly believe they will, they'll fire the rockets at these oil facilities. And this will all occur within minutes. I mean, this is a risk. It's not a certainty. But this is the kind of considerations that are going on at the Pentagon today.
Does anybody Did anybody, and this is one of the things that really woke me up, and it was after 9/11. I remember the first time I read it, it was Osama bin Laden, and he said, what I did to Russia, I will bring to the United States. And I thought, you arrogant SOB, you didn't bring down Russia. It was Reagan and the Pope and Thatcher. And indeed, he played a huge role. We all did. It was the perfect storm. And about 5 years ago, that's when I reread it again, I went, oh my gosh. That's what I'm most concerned about, is that there are so many of these things that could be huge, but also that's tied into what would happen in the Middle East is also tied in to just running over Europe. Europe itself is teetering with Muslim extremists as well. How does the world stand without America standing there and being prepared to deal with it?
Glenn, you know, this is a very important point that you brought up. What happens with America not there is exactly what happens when the teacher leaves the classroom. A lot of these people go wild, and I'm talking in particular in the Muslim world. And what you have in Western Europe in particular is they are no longer going to be able to be embarrassed that how we interact with them or how we think about them and how they deal with this threat over there. They're going to fold like a cheap wallet. They already are falling. We saw with here at Wilders where they wouldn't let him in to speak, and he got invited to the House of Parliament there. So this is a big problem, and bin Laden also said that his goal was to cripple us economically. So what a great time to kick America is when it is in a financial crisis to try to make it worse.
Yeah, and we all said that, you know, we all didn't have a problem thinking that the Russia could fall and collapse from economics, and yet for some reason a lot of Americans are like, oh, that'll never happen to us. Why? What makes us different? Okay.